Welcome. Good morning. So this is our third outreach lecture. First one was by me on the 10 thought leaders from India, and second one was yesterday, the tradition of Indian music, and today is the third. We call it the Vedas and the Chandas. So before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge the people who have supported us. Many of them are with us. These things do not happen by simple means. We have a lot of support behind it: financial support, moral support, intellectual support, computer support. So all our volunteers in IDC, particularly this Chandu and Prem, who helped through various parts of this lecture, and then many are people who have funded. We have this membership we created that will offer 12 lectures and $100 for the membership. So people have come in. We have over 14 now, and more people may join. And also we have donations. So anyway, I acknowledge them all. And we don't beg much because more money means we have to be accountable because we don't know what we can deliver. So we do what we can slowly. And so anyway, with that acknowledgement, uh, shall we? I think we can. Professor Akluzkar is here. Akluzkar is a mentor to our organization. He's the one long time ago, 2001. He was visiting Harvard, and he encouraged me that this part has to be studied because by that time I had been to India a few times, visited India all around, tried to study Sanskrit, tried to understand it, but I had almost given up because India is too large, too complex, too many things can't be contained. And but he said not to give up and try, so I retried. So what you see is that effect of the retrials, that can we contain India in a box, in a presentation, in some slides. So that is the India Discovery Center. So to see whether an average man, your neighbor, next door person, man in the street, the police cop, the man in China, may know that this is India. So it has many layers. So one line definition, 3-line definition, a paragraph definition, one page definition, and then some more detailed definition. So we are trying to check the rudiments of them, which must be known in order that India be known. So that's where we should have started. We'll still try to see what happened before the Vedas, how the popular tunes came, how people did the arts, dance. Dr. Professor Tripathi did hint on it yesterday, but the rigorous or more empirical work, particularly the neurology of the tunes, has not been done or we shall see what we can do about them. Our goal is to see as much science we can add to this empirical findings. And we proceed. We're pedestrians. We proceed slowly. So anyway, so today's lecture is the Vedas and the Chandas. So why not I ask Professor Aklujkar to give us that orientation about what we may listen. I've not shared the slides with him, but he may speak example from what he thinks. Professor Aklujkar. You have to unmute yourself.
Not unmuted, sir.
Yeah, okay, now can hear. Proceed.
Well, I'm going to give you a mix-up of ideas. There is Professor Mishra introduced our problems as academics in teaching of Indian origin, teaching in the Western world. What he saw is very understandable. One thing I have come to, I still work on these things. One is we need a multi-pronged approach, first of all, and we need to be patient with ourselves. It takes a lot of time. I do this by agreeing to serve on different departments. That is, I have reviewed the Department of Linguistics at our university. I reviewed the Department of Asian Studies at University of Washington, our neighboring place. And while doing that, I can introduce some of my ideas. That's one way.
Professor Clues, to hold that, I think we take that at the end. Now we talk to the topic, the lecture, because we record it all. So that part was before the lecture.
Yes, I know, but
Yeah,
I'm just
introduce the lecture. Yeah,
Tripathi should get all the time he needs.
Right.
So I'll stop here. But I'm very happy to see him here, and in my view, he is really a representation of what an Indian Sanskritist should be. And I hope that people in India who are actually falling behind in their own field, in their own study of their own heritage, there's a lot of money, but there is not a lot of talent. And so that's the sad reality. But we have a rare talent like Professor Tripathi. So let me just make space for him and say, please go ahead. Good morning.
Okay.
So Prabhatam Shubhamastu.
Okay. So Chandu is recording, okay?
Yeah, yes, I've been recording.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, okay. Sir, I'm sorry I could not join on time. There was some connectivity problem. Okay. I'm Shrikant Bahulkar.
Okay, no, proceed at the end.
Yeah, okay.
Tripathi Shah, move on.
Yeah.
Shall I start?
Yes, please.
Suprabhatam. Please make me visible also.
Yeah.
And with the videos.
Maybe you have to do something.
Yes, now it's all right.
No, you are visible, sir. You are visible.
Thank you very much. And at the outset, I would like to convey my sense of gratitude for Vijayji, again, Premji and Chanduji, for the excellent work they have done by the way of reworking whatever I had sent to them. I am learning a lot by such experiences. I don't know how far I will be able to learn at this age. In Hindi, we say, "Ab aakhiri waqt mein kya musalman honge." So these are the days. You see, we are just preparing to depart. But whatever time is left, we can always go on learning. So I agree to deliver such lectures because I don't know how far the audiences will be benefited. But by the way of this process, I also learned something. And thank you very much, Professor Akluzkar, for his benign presence yesterday and today also, and for his very encouraging remarks. I take them as blessings from a younger scholar, a senior scholar to a scholar belonging to the next generation. And he has always been encouraging me. For the past 40 years, we met on several platforms and we were together at Pune also. So I will be talking for this second lecture on Veda and Chandas. So yesterday we discussed the early beginnings of music in India, and I hope I could give a very rough idea how music started in India. There were some beginnings in Rig Veda and in Samveda properly. The tradition of Samveda developed a proper musical system which continued for I think 2 millennia in India. Until around 10th, 11th century, the new system of ragas was adopted. So in the same way, Chandas and Chandas Shastra, prosody, you can say, that also started with the Rig Veda. And in Vedic Samhitas, we find a huge variety of chandas. Chandasas, you can say. I will come to it about the pronunciation. And they may be uncountable. The system is such that you can create new chandas, just as the very expert musicians create new ragas. I love Kumar Gandharva's performances. So he created some new ragas. Gandhi Malhar, a new raga he created. Or Bhimsen Joshi, he is also a great musician, a great maestro. So he also created some new ragas. So many musicians, Ali Akbar Khan or others. So just by combination of 7 notes, Shadj Rishabh, Gandhar, Nishad, etc., and Komal Nishad and Tivra Madhyam and Shuddha Madhyam, just by the combination of these 7 and their Komal and Shuddha varieties, you can create thousands of ragas. In the same way, just by the combination of aksharas, you can create an infinity of chandas. So in coming to the slide, in Vedic literature, the word chandas ending with S, and we say in Sanskrit Vyakaran, we will say it is sakaranta, ends in dantya sa. So dental S, you can say. So in Vedic literature, the word chandas is used in the sense of mantra, a hymn, or a metrical composition. There are references, I will omit them. In Purush Sukta, a well-known hymn from Rig Veda, and it occurs in Yajurveda also, with some additional mantras. It is said that a variety of metrical compositions came out from the body of the primordial being, the Purusha. So Purush is a philosophical category in Vedic world of thought, and many things were generated from this Purusha. The whole cosmos came out, you can say. And Kalidasa has used the word in the sense of mantra, chandas as mantra. And he says that just as Pranav is the first mantra, in the same way that king, the hero of Raghuvansha, was the first king in the dynasty. This is about Raghuvansha. So Pranav is Omkara. Omkara is single letter, you can say Om. You just say Om, and that is called Pranav, and that is Omkara. That itself is a mantra, and that itself is a chandas. Because there are chandasas with single letters, with single syllable. And then you have 2 syllables, 2 aksharas, more than 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can go on multiplying the number of aksharas, they make chandas, and each chanda can yield so many varieties. So the Indian thinkers, philosophers were expert in creating these numbers. So Bharat Muni says that there can be 13 crores, 17 lakhs, something of the varieties of the 26 chandas that he is discussing. So it may sound ridiculous. So we can say that we can select those one which are practically employed in kavya, in poetry. So next, the seers of Veda viewed the world as an everlasting, vivacious piece of art created by the Supreme Being. I cited this line from Atharva Veda, and it says, see this poem created by God. It is about this universe, you can say. So the whole universe is a kavya, or poem, created by God. Devasya Pashya Kavyam na mamarana jiryati. So here kavya used in the sense of chandas, and chandas and kavya both are treated as synonymous. So you can say that poetry, kavya and chandas, they have a wider connotation in this tradition. And it is not simple poetry. Kavya has a very wide connotation and various forms of literature. All the forms of literature, they are incorporated in kavya. And chandas is the same thing in the Vedic view. So the whole universe is a kavya written, authored by the Almighty, you can say. And this idea of chandas forms the foundation of the whole edifice of Veda also, because chandas, it is chandas everywhere. It is chandas creating everything. So the word chandas ending in s or this I have. You can also say ending in visarga, chanda and chandas. It's a generic term for prosody, chandas shastra, and it is used in singular number here. There is another word, chanda, ending in the sound of a, ending in the sound of a in English alphabet. And that actually has a different meaning. Chanda ending in a means will or desire, swachanda, like that. And sometimes, not sometimes, but mostly in our languages, in Indian vernaculars, you can say, modern Indian languages, you can say the word chanda ending in the sound of a and or akara of Sanskrit alphabet is used, what we in Sanskrit say chandas. So to avoid confusion, I would always be using the word chandas, because that means prosody for our purpose. Coming to the next, the fundamental philosophy behind Chandas Shastra or prosody visualizes the whole cosmos vibrating in laya, that is rhythm, or tempo also, you can say. Maybe rhythm and tempo both, they create the idea of laya. It is also a very pervasive term in our arts. Sculpture has laya, dance has laya, poetry has laya, and several types of layas are defined by the masters of literary theory. and gati, movement, combined with yati, that is pause. Virama is another word. So laya, rhythm or tempo, gati, movement, and yati. These three combined, joined together, they create chandas. And the chandas is just a vehicle for carrying the vibrations, making them explicit in tones, explicit with tones and intonations. In chandas, the lasya and tandav both go hand in hand together. There are, as we will discuss, there can be very vigorous kind of meters or chandas, and there can be very tender, soft kind of structures in chandas. So the violation of the specified tone, intonation, pause, and movement in a chandas is like the use of vivadi swara, the discordant note in a musical composition of a particular raga. That becomes horrific if you use this Tivra Madhyam in Bhairavi, you say, or you violate the basic structure of a raga. So that will be horrible to a person who knows the raga. So I know it because I commit such horrible mistakes when, if at all, I try to sing. So in the sacrifice of the primordial Purusha, as described in the Purush Sukta of Rigveda, the 7 meters are said to have formed this circumference when the infinite was being channelized into a finite form. So the chandasas, chandansi in Sanskrit plural, they came out from that Purusha, the primordial being, you can say. And the names of these chandas yesterday also I cited. So maybe some of them, if you remember, because we will need them. At least I'll be treating Gayatri, Trishtup, and Jagati, these three. So Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup. Anushtup is also an important variety of chandas. And Gita is written mostly in Anushtup. Ramayana and Mahabharata, they are mostly in Anushtup. So Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, Brahati, Pankti, Trishtup, and Jagti. These 7 were the varieties of chandas born out of that Purusha. Yesterday I referred to Aitreya Mahidasa. He is a Vedic philosopher and aesthetician. He categorizes Shilpa or Chandas into 2 types. He also uses this word Shilpa. So he says that Shilpa and Chandas and Kavya, they are the same thing. And it is all universe is Shilpa, all universe is Kavya, and all universe is Chandas, created by Deva, the god, you can say. So the Shilpa or Kavya also is of 2 types according to Aitreya, Daiva Shilpa and Manusha Shilpa. Daiva Shilpa is divine art, you can say. There are always difficulties of translating these words in English. So Shilpa also is a very pervasive term, at least in Aitreya. Nowadays, Shilpa we use in the sense of craft, but it is not just craft in Aitreya. And Bharat Muni, when he was writing Natya Shastra, he knew these connotations because they all are inspired by Aitreya Mahidasa. Even Abhinav Gupta acknowledges that we are following Aitreya Mahidasa. So the whole world is Daiva Shilpa, he says. You can say the divine poem, divine art, divine Shilpa. And there is a Manusha Shilpa. Manusha is human being. So there is a human Shilpa, you can say. So, and the Anukrati of Daiva Shilpa is Manush Shilpa, he says. Tasya Deva Shilpasya Anukrati Manusha Shilpam. Something like that he says. So he uses this word Anukrati And roughly I translate it doing after it. Anu is after that, following that. And Krati is doing. So doing after that, creating after that. That means you create something out of the given thing. That is Anukriti. Not exactly copying, not exactly even the mimesis of Aristotle or Western terminology, but it simply we can say that you just remake in a creative way something which is given. So the given world is being recreated. This is Anukriti. We create again. And this whole concept of you see creativity, that is followed by all the acharyas in literary theory, that what is kavya? It is creating the world again. So I need not cite Mammata and several literary theorists who speak about it, their idea of kavya. So Aitreya also says that the entire cosmos is vibrating in chandas, in a rhythmic pattern. The entire universe is Shilpa, and the Shilpa is Chandas also. This I have. So Yatesham Dev Shilpanam Anukriti Shilpam Adhigamyate. And he cites some examples also that just there is an elephant you see in the world, and there is an artist who creates an elephant out of wood. So he is remaking an elephant. He is recreating an elephant in his own way, and so many other examples you can add. Then ultimately, Aitreya says that this Shilpa is Atma Samskriti. It is purifying oneself. Every Yajmana Atmanam Samskurute, he says. The Yajmana, whosoever performs the sacrifice. Again, this the concept of Yajna. So the whole cosmos is Yajna. Whatever you do is Yajna. Whatever creativity you are doing is Yajna. And we, in English, we use the term sacrifice. So this is not a perfect term, though, for Yajna. So whatever Yajna you are doing it for self-purification, he says. So all art activity is for self-purification. It is for self-emancipation, you can say. This is roughly the idea of Aitreya Mahidasa. And he has also discussed the philosophy of Chandas. And he says that, yes, I have covered this. So extending the applicability of this concept of twofold art to music also. Yesterday we discussed music. So Aitreya says that there are two types of Gita, Deva Gita and Manush Gita. So there is a song sung by the divine being, you can say, and then there is a Gita by human being. Gita, or Gita means song, not Gita, Bhagavad Gita. So there is a Manush Gita, the human song. So he says that the Rik, the mantras of Rig Veda, they are Deva Gita because they are Apurusheya. No human being has composed them. So they were seen by the seers, and they were created by the Purusha, you can say, or by the Supreme Being. So they are Deva Gita. But the Gatha, and we will be discussing Gatha, you can say popular song, the popular songs which were prevalent in Vedic times, they were called Gathas. And even in Vedic Samhitas, there are Gathas, and they are specified, they are defined also. So Gatha is Manush Gita, Rik is Deva Gita. So such differentiations Aitreya makes. And this I have covered. Coming to the next one, I like the concepts of Shilpa, Anukriti and Atma Samskriti, the idea of Chandas, a meter, a psalm, or a mantra in metrical form, involves the fundamental principles of Indian aesthetics as envisaged by the Vedic seers And next one, is it here? Yes. So I would like to refer to a later literary theorist and a great poet, a wonderful poet of 11th century, Kshemendra. He has written an independent text on prosody, Chandas Shastra, and I would have to refer to him again because he is the person who discusses the moods of the chandas, which chandas is suited for which mood, which chandas is suited for which season, and which chandas is suited for which situation, and which of the poets excels in this chandas, in this variety of meter, and why it is so. Because there is a pattern in the brain, and there is a pattern of rhythm, and that pattern is suited to a typical chandas. So Kalidasa can create a very perfect Mandakranta, and Bhavavuti can create a perfect Shikharni. So Kshemendra discusses the reasons lying behind this. Why Bhavavuti writes Shikharni in such a meticulous, perfect way, and Kalidasa cannot create such Shikharni. He may be a great poet, but he fails in Shikharni. And Kshemendra points out the failures of these great poets. So they say that their brain is suitable to a typical specific rhythm, and that rhythm comes out easily. When I write in Sanskrit, Shardul Vikritit comes out very easily. I can sometimes when I speak in Shardul Vikritit, if I'm talking in Sanskrit, it comes so easily because the typical rhythmic pattern of Shardul Vikridita, which is a very long structure, lies in my brain somewhere. So the thinkers in India who are discussing this Chandas Shastra, they knew that rhythmic patterns are percolating this universe, and every human being imbibes a particular rhythmic pattern. So he has to move in his life as per that rhythmic pattern. When I see some great personalities, I find that they have a rhythmic pattern. When I see Gandhi, you see, when I study Gandhi, I'm trying to become a very humble student of Gandhi, say. So when I study him, his gestures, his moving, I see that he has a particular rhythmic pattern. Everybody has. If they fail in their rhythmic pattern, their life becomes discordant. So the use of Chanda Shastra is practical use for us is that we should discover our rhythm of life. And Chanda Shastra would would help us in understanding our rhythm of life. That is why I just try to understand the various chandas, the varieties of chandas. That is the only benefit for me, practical benefit for me of the Chandas Shastra. Apart from that, I can in my classes I can teach chandasas, and I'm not very good at that. That also I know. There are persons who have a better understanding of Chandas Shastra than me. Maybe Balram Shukla, he has been working on chandas, and other persons. But that you see is a blessing for us, this whole Chandas Shastra. So coming to the next slide, you see the word chandas comes from the root chadi, to cover. You see chhatra, chadan, all these terms come out from this root, and chhatra is umbrella, whatever that covers, this is chhatra. And this chandas also is derived from this root. Etre Mahidasa and other Aranyakas also, they said that this word chandas comes from the root chadi, chadane, that which serves as a cover for protection from evil, death, or calamity is chandas. This is the definition which Aitreya gives for chandas. The idea is that the mantras and the poetic compositions are saviors of humanity. Sayana, in the preface to Rigved Bhashya, to his Rigved Bhashya, has quoted 3 Shruti Vakyas. In the beginning of his exposition of Rigveda, he has given a long preface, and in the beginning there he cites some sentences from scriptures, from Aitreya and other ones. And they say that they define this etymological meaning of the word chandas and to explain its function as a cover or a shield. So there is an alternative etymology also. I will not go into the details into the details of it. Chadi alladane, the root chadi, which means to delight, to please. The word chandas comes from that root also. That is alternative etymology. But the seers say, Aitreya and others, they say that the word chandas comes from chadi, to cover. According to Aitreya Aranyaka, which is a part of Aitreya Brahmana, which is authored by Aitreya Mahidasa. And I am referring to Aitreya Mahidasa in my last lecture also and today also. The chandas becomes a shield to protect human beings from being involved in a sin. The shield or cover of chandas can also protect the yajmana, a human being, you can say, whosoever performs yajna or sacrifice. So there is heat generated when you perform yajna. When you are performing a yajna at the physical level, there is a fire burning in the Vedi. That fire has heat. So chandas would protect you from that fire. But apart from that, there is a symbolic meaning of this, that chandas would protect you from the heat of fire. So perhaps they want to say that whatever santapa, whatever the grievances, whatever the heat of our sorrows we have in this world, chandas would come as a rescue for us. So I will omit these citations, you see, to avoid. Already, I think a lot of time I am taking in explanations. So these are the citations from Aitreya Aranyaka. We come to the next one, because you have these slides for your record, so you can try to read them later on. And the next slide says that the growing heat of fire, from that also the chandas would protect you. We skip over this one also, and the next one also. And this last one says that to protect you from apamratyu. The word apamratyum is coming in the first line here. So to save you from apamratyu, that is akala mratyu, untimely death, also chandas would come to your rescue. Yes, I'm trying to give explanation. Yeah, explanations I'm giving. Don't bother about that. I'm not omitting the explanations. If I'm omitting the citations, Sanskrit citations, so chandas comes as a rescue from apamratyu or akal mratyu, that is untimely death. So there also it is not physical death, bodily death, I think. So you should not die within. So to protect your spiritual death, I can say, chandas comes for your rescue. It becomes your savior. Perhaps that is what they mean. So chandas immortalizes us. That is the idea. Kavya also immortalizes us. In one of his sonnets, Shakespeare discusses the idea of immortality, that shall I compare you to the summer's day? You are more than that, and you are immortal. You are immortalized in my sonnet, something like that he says. So Kavya creates immortality, and the chandas creates immortality. And that immortality is rooted in our self-being, in our Atman. So Kavya leads to that immortality. Kavya doesn't give you physical immortality. You will not become immortal by body. So physical immortality also is discussed in the tradition, maybe in the scientific tradition, that there was a Nagarjuna who was an alchemist, and he was experimenting. He created some rasayana which could make a human being immortal. Such stories are there. I do not very much believe in such stories, but I do believe in the idea of immortality, which Aitreya discusses, that this chandas would make you amrata. And the whole concept of being amrata is also discussed in our philosophical literature, particularly in the Upanishads, where in Brihadaranyaka, Maitreyi says that what will I do with this world if it doesn't make me amrata? I will not cite the Sanskrit sentence. It is very well known. Professor Bahulkar and Professor Akluzkar might be remembering it. So this is apamratyu, not exactly the physical death. And this apamratyu is overruled by chandas. So, and there are stories again cited in Chandogya Upanishad, that is also cited by Sayana, that the gods were afraid of apamratyu, so they took recourse of chandas. This also I will omit. And so all this cosmos is created out of this chandas, and Yaska and Nirukta says that nothing is created without chandas. Bhartrihari perhaps in his Vakyapadiyam also says something like that. And Professor Akluzkar is an expert of Bhartrihari's philosophy. So, sorry. So I'm omitting the Sanskrit citations to cut short the time, and I'm explaining them. And there is another concept in Aitreya Mahidasa. I found it very interesting. Maybe that I'm citing Aitreya out of context, and great Vedic scholars are here, Professor Bahulkar and Professor Akluzkar. They may correct me, but I tried to read. You see, this is my weakness, that even if I do not understand a single sentence, I go through the text. Sometimes maybe that it would yield some meaning to me. So I just made a very miserable effort to go through Aitreya Brahmana. So the previous one. So I found the previous one. Yeah. No. Yes. No. Next to it. Anyway, that rasa beginning with RASA. I don't know where. Yes. So Aitreya here says that the rasa was oozing out of the chandas. And the Sanskrit text is also there. Maybe the Vedic scholars could better understand it, what he is actually saying. But he said that rasa was coming out of the chandas. And Prajapati feared that if this rasa is oozing out of the chandas, then we will be left with nothing. So he tried to collect the rasa flowing out of the chandas in other types of chandas. This is the story. So he then proceeded to collect the rasa coming out from Gayatri in Narashansi, the rasa emanating from Trishtubh into Raibhi, and rasa coming out of Jagti into Parikshiti. So this appeared to me very interesting, because this Gatha, Narashansi, Parikshiti, and Raibhi, these are the various types of kavyas or Gitas also, you can say, songs, which were very popular in even in Rigvedic times, even in the times of Rigveda, because they are being referred in Samhitas. And there are references in Sanskrit plays also. There is a Rebhya in Vrachakatikam who is singing a Gatha. He is a great exponent of classical music, the Rebhila of Vrachakatika. So perhaps he is singing Rebhi. That is why he is called Rebhila. So these are very popular types of songs, and they are being also sung. So the seer, Aitreya perhaps means that rasa is there in the Shruti, in the Chandas, in the mantra, but that rasa also percolates the Laukika songs, the popular songs, you can say. This is what I understand. This is how I understand this passage. Coming to the next one. Yes, I will take some times, maybe 5 minutes. You will find it very interesting story, you see, coming from Chanda Prakasha. It's a later text on Chanda Shastra, but I found this story very interesting. You see, Sheshnaga, the great serpent who holds this earth on his or her 1,000 hoods. So the Sheshnaga is said to be a great scholar of Vyakarana and a great scholar of Chanda Shastra also. So the story says that Sheshnaga, he was sick of holding the earth on his hoods, and he wanted to see how this universe, how this world looks. So he came out of Kshir Sagara. How he managed to came out, this is a mythical story, you can't question. But somehow he came out of Kshir Sagara, where Vishnu is lying and where he holds the whole earth on his hoods. So he came out of this whole prapancha, and to see, to have a sort of picnic, to have the fresh air of the world, he came out to see the world, how does it appear. And when he came out, he was just, he stood aghast to see that Garuda is before him, because Garuda is always waiting on the bank of Kshir Sagara if Lord Vishnu needs him, and because he is the vehicle of Lord Vishnu, he is Vahana of Lord Vishnu. So he was there, and this serpent is the food of Garuda. Vultures eat serpents, and Garuda is a variety of vulture. So Sheshnaga saw that Garuda is before him, and he is just out. So what I have done, by coming out, I see that this Garuda is before me. He will just devour me. And Garuda was very happy. He was rejoiced. He said, yes, after long years, after long wait, I have this food which I can relish. Now I will eat you. You can't escape now. So Sheshnaga understood his predicament. He said, sir, you will eat me. I can't escape. It's all right. You eat me, but just allow me to make one last request before I die. At least that much of mercy you should do for me. So, okay, Garuda said, okay, you tell me what is your last wish. Sheshnaga said that I am an expert of Chanda Shastra. And if you eat me, that whole Chanda Shastra will die with me. So I will die with this grievance in my heart that I couldn't create a student of my Shastra, my discipline. So you just sit calmly, you just sit with me peacefully and learn Chanda Shastra for some time with me. And after that, you are free to eat me. So Garuda said, okay, I will learn Chanda Shastra from you. Then Sheshnaga started teaching Chanda Shastra to Garuda. And Garuda was learning very quickly. He learned all the philosophy and all the varieties of Chanda Shastra because he was Garuda. He had that mind. So teaching the varieties of Chanda Shastra, Sheshnaga came to Bhujanga Prayatam Chandas, a variety of meter called Bhujanga Prayatam. And he was defining Bhujanga Prayata, that Bhujanga Prayata has the structure like this, Yamata, 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 Yamata. This is the structure of Bhujanga Prayata, 1/4 of Bhujanga Prayata. He explained the definition and cited the passage which ended in the words Bhujanga Prayatam. And he repeated this word 4 times. They say this is Bhujanga Prayatam Chandas. Bhujanga Prayatam, Bhujanga Prayatam, Bhujanga Prayatam, Bhujanga Prayatam. This is the meter I am explaining to you. And Garuda was lost in the beauty of the Chandas Shastra. He was with closed eyes. He was just listening, devouring each word of Sheshnaga. Sheshnaga saw that he is lost almost in a meditation, understanding the Chandas. So he just plunged into the waters of Kshir Sagar immediately in that moment, uttering this line, Bhujanga Prayatam, Bhujanga Prayatam, Bhujanga Prayatam, Bhujanga Prayatam. The word Bhujanga Prayatam also means that here goes the serpent. Here is the Prayata, or walking away of the Bhujanga. And Garuda heard that sound of plunging, and he was aroused, and he shouted that you are deceiving me. You are cheating me. You have promised that you will not go away. So Sheshnaga came out from the waters. He told him that I had warned you 4 times that here goes the serpent, here goes the serpent. You did not listen to my warning. So what can I do? In this way, Sheshnaga saved himself through this Chandas Shastra. So this is a symbolic story, you can say, mythical story told in a work on prosody to suggest that Chandas Shastra can sometimes come to your rescue. It can save you from some peril in life. And throughout your life, Chandas Shastra can always be a solace to you. It has been a solace to me, you see. So those who practice Chandas Shastra, they start living in Chandas Shastra. There were Pandits who used to speak in Chandas. One Pandit is always speaking in Shastrartha, they are speaking in Anushtup. So this happens. So you start living in the body of the Chandas, and that Chandas becomes your body. It happens like that. So the cosmos is a Shilpa replenished with Alankaras. The Alankaras are also defined in Chandas. The Shilpa is said to be Chandomaya, created out of Chandas. These are the ideas of Aitreya. I'm just explaining his sentence. The universe has its own rhythmic patterns, movements, and pauses. And the movement of time has rhythm. Coming of days and nights appears to be a divine dance to Aitreya. He also says that whatever that is the day, yat kinchit aha, yat kinchit ratri, something like that, tat sarvam chandomayam, like this. So all the whole cycle of day and night, of seasons, of the ritus, this is all chandas, he says. So this is the philosophy. The slides are not coming fully, you see. Anyway, so then coming to a definition of chandas. The definition, technical definition, you can say that whatever that can be measured through the aksharas, the varnas or syllables, that is chandas. Yad akshara parimanam tat chanda. And whatever that is delimited by matra and sankhya of the aksharas, that is chandas. So this definition practically we use for the chandas. Otherwise, it's a pervasive category. Because these definitions suffer from the defects of definition. I will not go into the defects of definition. And there are other definitions given in the Vedic tradition, ma chanda, pratima chanda, prama chanda, etc. So these are definitions. Ma denotes the number, so that number is chandas. Prama denotes the substance in which the numbers are located, that is chandas. And pratima defines an image or structure, that is chandas. So joining of these two, the numbers of the syllables or aksharas and a substance content is there in the lines, in the quarters, and then there is a structure created out of that. That becomes chandas. That is roughly the idea of the meter chandas. Coming to the next, there are deities of chandas defined. So each chanda has its deity, deva, and they are also defined. So these details I will omit. Gayatri has Prithvi, Agni, and Brahma Varchas. Trishtup has, yes, you can skip over this. I have, yes, wait, please. I will come to it. And Trishtup has Antariksh, Indra, etc. Jakti has Dev, etc. And yes, that one, the previous one, Vishnu Dharmottar Purana, was it there? Yeah, I have covered these. Anyway, yeah, yes. So Vishnu Dharmottar Purana rightly therefore says that the 7 meters, Gayatri, Ushnik, Anushtup, etc., etc., they are 7 horses of the sun. So the whole idea of Chandas is related to universal time, to Akhanda Kala, you can say, the indivisible time. And the sun represents that Akhanda Kala, also indivisible time. And sun has 7 horses, therefore these are the 7 meters. So I will not go into the details of it. That may makes things complicate. So coming to the next one, there are turning points in the history of development of the Chanda Shastra. And please come to the next one, perhaps. There have been 4 turning points in the history of more than 3 millenniums of Chanda Shastra. The first occurs when the Vedic meters were composed by the seers, and the mantras that the seers realized in a vision formed the vast corpus of Vedic Samhitas. These mantras, as seen by the rishis, also initiated the beginnings of Chanda Shastra or prosody. And we have said that 7 meters initially were identified out of the vast mass of oral poetry in the form of Vedic mantras. These have been recounted in the Mahabhashya, and I will omit. So Gayatri has 6 aksharas, according to one explanation, in 4 quarters. If it has 3 lines or 3 padas, then there are 8 aksharas. Ushnik has 7 aksharas, Anushtup has 8, Prahati has 9, Pankti has 10, Trishtup has 11, Jagti has 12. So this is the number of syllables or aksharas in each quarter or pada. And each chanda has 4 quarters or 4 padas. This much, please try to remember. And we will again come to it. So there will be no difficulty in understanding when I talk about the varieties. So the next turning, coming quickly to the next one, the second turning point in the history of Chanda Shastra comes with the emergence of gathas or popular forms of poetry that also I have discussed, and various popular literary forms were existing side by side with the mantras, and they were taken up in popular literature. And coming to the next one, there are various definitions of gatha, and I will not go into the details of it. Pingala and Ratnakar and other texts, they deal with them. The third turning point in the history of Chanda Shastra occurred with the adoption of Vedic meters into Lokika Chandas. I will discuss this because this is very important if you want to understand the history of Chanda Shastra, how the Vedic meters, Gayatri, Ushnik, Trishtup, Jagti, Brahati, they finally developed into the Chandas we read in Sanskrit. And this was almost a transformation of the whole scenario. And Bhagavati says that this is the new world created. Amnaya Danyatra Nutanash Chandasam Avatara. When Valmiki writes Anushtup in the Laukika Bhasha, in Bhasha, and Bhagavati defines it that this is the beginning of a new world. So this is the third phase. And it is spread over almost 2 millenniums, one before the Common Era and one after it. And several texts were written to define these chandas. I will omit the details. The fourth phase, as I understand it, occurs around the beginning of the second millennium, 10th, 11th century AD, you can say, when these vrattas in Sanskrit, like Vanshastha, Vasantilka, etc., they are yielding the other varieties in the vernaculars. So there is, we find an Ovi Chanda in Marathi, there is a Doha and Chopai in Hindi. In Old Gujarati, there are so many such chandas. So this is the fourth and last phase, which continues till our times. So poetry is being written in all these varieties of chandas. You can write a Vedic Anushtup, you can write a Lokik Anushtup, you can write Vanshastha, and you can write Chopai, Doha, and all these varieties. So all these four phases of the development of Chandas Shastra continue with us, those who are aware of the history and those who create poetry even now. So Pingala was the first Acharya of Chandas Shastra, as I understand from the history. And he flourished sometimes after Yaska because he refers to Yaska. Yaska is 7th century BC. And since I am referring to Pingala in the coming slides, so this name you must remember. There was a Pingala, the Acharya, master of Chandas Shastra, who wrote a text, Pingal Sutram, and he is perhaps the first Acharya in the history of prosody, Chandas Shastra. Then we come to another term, Vratta, which also you must remember. So Chandas creates Vrattas. Vratta literally means a circle. So Chandas is an immensity, you see. It is an infinitum, and you circle it, you delimit it into a typical structure that becomes Vratta. So Chandas yields many Vrattas. Each Chandas can yield into thousands of varieties, but there are Vrattas which delimit these varieties, so that Anushtup can have as many as 256 varieties, but we select a few out of them, so that becomes Anushtup. So this is roughly the idea, and maybe when I come to the formation of Vrattas, it may become better explicit, it may become more clear. So as in the next slide, I said that Gayatri has 24 syllables in all the quarters taken together. If you say that there are 4 quarters in Gayatri, then 6 letters, and total number is 24. Trishtup has 44 aksharas, all in all, and Jakti has 48. And in the same way, other chandas also you have to understand. And so in this way, beginning from a single akshara up to 26 aksharas, these chandas are formed. Ukta has only 1 akshara or syllable, Atyukta has 2, and Madhya has 3, Pratishtha has 4, and no, the previous one, please. And Ushnik has 7, no, before that. So in this way, the number goes on multiplying, coming up to Atyashti 17, and finally Utkriti ending with 26 in each line. So 26 letters or aksharas in each line, in each pada. That is the longest meter. After that, there are meters, there are chandas, but they are called dandaka vrittas. So you can have as many aksharas in each line. There is no end of it. So this is the wonderful world of chandas. So beginning from 1 letter to 26, and these 26 chandas, they yield various varieties, thousands of varieties. So I will take some examples. You see, coming to the next one. This is Anushtup, very well known from Rig Veda. So this chandas is Anushtup. So you can see that there are 8 aksharas in each quarter. Sahasra Shikha Purukha. This is 1 pada. Sahasraksha Sahasrapat. This is 2nd. Sabhumim Vishrato Vratva. This is the 3rd. Atyatishtat dashangulam. This is the fourth. So these are the four padas of Anushtup, and each pada has 8 aksharas. You can count sa, ha, sra, shi, shir, sha, pu, ru, shah. That makes 8. So in this way, 8 aksharas in each pada or quarter. And in this way, the Anushtup in 4 padas will be completed. But then this Anushtup will have numerous varieties, because you see that the structure is differing in each pada. So there are numerous kinds of structures created that creates a plethora of varieties. So the Acharya, the masters of Chandas Shastra, try to understand these structures and what possible structures can be adaptable for poetry. This is the problem in Chandas Shastra. If Anushtup has 256 permutations and combinations, mathematically you can calculate it, because each quarter has 8 aksharas. So you make 8 houses, and you write Guru in each of the 8 houses. Then you fill the next quarter with Laghu, the next house with Laghu, and go on doing this. So that would yield into 256 varieties. The mathematical method of calculating the permutations or combinations of these 8 letters. So in this way, the Chandas having 26 aksharas in each line would have many more varieties. So the problem is how to define the structures which suit to the rhythmic patterns of an individual poet or the creativity. So that is what the Chandas Shastra is doing. So beginning from the Rigvedic times. So coming to Trishtup, you see this is the Trishtup from Veda, and this is also a famous mantra from Savitri Sukta of Rigveda. Akrishnena Rajasa Vartamano. This is one quarter with 11 aksharas. Niveshyan Amritam Martyam Cha Hiranyena Savitarathena. This is the third pada. Devo Yati Bhuvnani Pashyan. This is the final and fourth pada. So, and then the structure would vary, because structure would vary as per the combination of short and long aksharas, ras and dirgha, and technically they are called Laghu and Guru. So, and coming to this next one, Jagti Chandas, which has 12 letters, 12 aksharas in each. So, Vayam Yagnim Prathamam Swastaye, Vayami Mitra Varuna Vihavase. So you can see that Vayam Yagnim Prathamam Swastaye, 12 aksharas are there. So combination of 12 aksharas would yield as many as 4,900 varieties. But out of these 4,900 varieties, only a few are selected because they make suitable rhythmic patterns. So to that we will come very shortly. And I will just give an example. Coming to Anushtup, you see. So I said that Anushtup yields as many as 256. But in Natya Shastra, Bharat Muni says that only 4 varieties out of the 256 are useful. Simhalekha, Mat Cheshtit, Vidyun Mala, and Chitta Vilasit. These are well-known chandas. Sometimes the names are differing in other texts, but these are well-known vrattas, I can say. So these are the well-known vrattas created out of Anushtup chandas, because these combinations mostly they are suitable. And in other texts, some more vrattas are also there from Anushtupa. But for example, I can say that this Mat Cheshtita, which is named as Panchichamar in the later text. So it is a variety of Anushtup. So Panchichamar is a well-known chandas. The Shiv Tandav Stotra of Ravana. Many of you might have heard it. It is available everywhere online. You can search, and it is sung. Dances are done. Dance recitals are done on Ravana's Shiv Tandav Stotra. So you can see what type of wonderful structure this 8 letters would create. A typical combination of it, like the combination would be like Jarau, 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 Jarau. Okay, so one Laghu and one Guru, one short vowel, one short letter, and then one long. So that will create a typical combination. So then it would become a wonderful structure like this. Jatakataha samrama brahman nilimpa nirjari vilola vichi varini. I am forgetting some. Dhagat 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 jwalal lat patt pavake kishore chandra shekhare rati pratikshanam mama dharadharendra nandini, like this. So it becomes a very thrilling experience to hear the very rhythmic pattern. You see, you may not understand a single letter, and this is the beauty of the Chanda Shastra. Rabindranatha, in his memory, in his reminiscences, he writes that I was just a 5-year boy, and my uncle was reciting Kumar Sambhavam, and he was chanting the Upjati Vratta, Bhagirathi Nirjharasi Karanam Bodha Muhukkam Pita Deva Daru. And I was just hearing him, and I was all horripilated. My hairs were rising in my body. It was so thrilling. And I could just understand that some fountain is gushing and gurgling, and some Himalaya mountain is there before me. I felt like this. I couldn't understand a single word of that stanza from Kalidasa. I didn't know Sanskrit as a small boy. So this experience is remembers. So this is what Chanda Shastra does for us, that it sends vibrations, and those vibrations percolate our body. And we must be a little sensitive for that. If we are not sensitive enough, then Chanda Shastra will not work. So anybody chanting Ravana's Shiv Tandav may not be thrilled like that. Jata Kata Sambrahma Brahman Nilimpa Nirjari Vilola Vichi Varini, etc. So that may not produce the ripples, the vibrations every time. But maybe a person who knows how to recite, that would create vibrations. So that is why Etreya Mahidasa said that the whole universe, yes, anyway, some good suggestion is there, I couldn't read. Whole universe is vibrating with. So in this way, now I will be winding up. I think I have taken a lot of time. I said that Trishtup of 11 letters can yield as many as 2048 varieties if you make combinations mathematically, if you can calculate. But out of the 2048, some useful vrittas are created, a total number of 7 in Natya Shastra. So Dodhak, Motak, Indravajra, Upendra Vajra, Rathodhata, Swagata, and Shalini. I'm citing these names because some Sanskritists are here, some experts are here. Rishiraj Pathak is here. So he can explain to you how Trishtupa becomes Indra Vajra and Upendra Vajra, and why, in which situation this Indra Vajra would be suitable. It would be suitable for a historical narrative, for a description, and Upendra Vajra also. So these vrattas created out of Trishtup, they are suited, Rathodhata, you see, in describing a rapid movement, a rapid narrative. So all these Shalini Vratta is very beautiful. It is beautiful for, it is suitable for describing very delicate situations. Dukkham tyaktum baddha mulo anuraga smritva yati dukkham navatvam yatra tesha yad vimuccheha vashpam prapta nanya yati buddhi prasadam. It is from Bhasa Swapna Vasadattam. Very delicate and tender emotions the more you try to forget the beloved one who has left you, the more your sorrow is renewed. Dukkham tyaktum baddha mulon raga spritva yati dukkham navatvam. So the structure of Shalini is suitable to this experience of suffering, to the experience of pangs, and Bhasa excels in creating Shalini. Kshemendra says that every poet cannot write good Shalini, and he cites so many bad Shalinis that this is not a suitable rhythmic pattern for Shalini. The definition of Shalini is confirmed. It has that yati at that number of letters, everything is perfect, but it doesn't ringing with that tempo. So Bhasa Shalini perhaps is vibrating with that laya, which is created out of Trish to create a Shalini. So this is the world of meters, and Jagati has, I said, that 4096 varieties. Out of these, Acharyas have selected maybe 10, 12 or 15. So they are very suitable for creating poems. The chandas like Totaka and Vanshastha is also there. It is quite often used by Kalidasa, and Bharavi excels in Vanshastha. Kshemendra says that no poet can excel Bharavi in the use of Vanshastha meter. Vanshastha become like a Atapatra for Bharavi. It holds his Vanshastha. Kshemendra says. So he uses the same metaphor of a cover which Aitreya Mahidasa uses. Kshemendra says that Vanshastha becomes the holding of the Atapatra for Bharavi, and he therefore is called Atapatra Bharavi. His Vanshastha is very beautiful. So that is why it seems to me that a particular poet excels in a particular meter, and Rajshekhara excels in Shardul Vikriditas. Bharavi excels in Vanshastha meters. So all these vrattas are created, and a very beautiful vratta like Sragvini is created out of Jagati. So I think we will wind up if Rishiraj Pathak is feeling well. I'm sorry that he is not well. And so many things are happening. You see, Sanjay Dwivedi could join today. Yesterday, he was caught in a different type of problem. It is this epidemic is spreading. He is all right, okay, but his neighbors, some neighbor was suffering, and he had to be rushed to hospital, something like that. So all these things are happening. I can't walk out of my door. The epidemic is on my doorsteps. So Rishiraj Pathak ji, if he feels like rendering a Sragvini and Malini and a Shikharini, then he can do it, which is created out of the 12 syllable structure of Jagati, and Vasant Tilka is created out of the 14 letters structure of Shakvari, and this Malini perhaps is created out of the 15 letter structure of Ati Shakvari, and 17 letter structure of Atyashti yields into Mandakranta and Shikharini. So this much I wanted to say. And Shardul Vikridit, the 19 letter structure creates chandas like vrattas like Shardul Vikridit. So if Rishiraj Pathak ji feels good, and he can, because he is a musician, he is trained in the tradition, and he is a Samapathin also. So yesterday, his performance was much to our benefit. And if he feels like, I would request him. Otherwise, I think I would end.
अहं सिद्धः अस्मि.
एतत् शोभनं तर्हि. प्रथमं स्रग्विणी भवेत्. प्रथमं तावत् स्रग्विणी स्यात्.
एकमेकं पद्यं श्रावयामि।
एकमेकं पद्यं यत् वैदिकं छन्दः वर्तते तदपि नामोद्धरणं तस्य क्रियतां, नामग्रहणं तस्य क्रियताम्। अनन्तरं यत् लौकिकं वृत्तं वर्तते एकैकं तस्य गानं पाठो वा भवेत्। तेन मन्ये अस्य व्याख्यानस्य क्वचित् सम्पूर्णता भवेत्, अन्यथा तु मम तु तथा मतिः गतिः धृतिः नास्ति इति कृत्वा अत्रैव विरमामि। So I take leave from you. Thank you very much again and again.
Slides are there. I think you'll come back to finish the slides. Come back to finish the slides. Okay. Risiraj.
जी, अहं प्रस्तौमि स्रग्विणीम्। विश्वबन्धुत्वमुद्घोषयत् पावनं विश्ववन्द्यैश्चरित्रैर्जगत् पावयत् विश्वमेकं कुटुम्बं समालोकयद् भूतले भाति मे नारतं भारतम्। इदानीं मालिनीं श्रावयेयम्।
मालिनी भवतु। Yes.
Say it in English.
Malini Atishakkar. Yes.
Introduce in English.
कालिदासस्य महाकवेः वर्तते न खलु बाण सन्निपात्योऽयमस्मिन् मृदुनि मृगशरीरे पुष्पराशाविवाग्निः क्व बत हरिणकानां जीवितं चातिलोलं क्व च निशितनिपाता वज्रसाराशरास्ते। इदानीं किं छन्दः? मन्दाक्रान्ता
भवेत्। मन्दाक्रान्ता तदनन्तरं शिखरिणी।
अस्तु अस्तु, मन्दाक्रान्ता प्रस्तूयते। कालिदासस्य कश्चित् कान्ता विरह गुरुणा स्वाधिकारात् प्रमत्तः शापेनास्तं गमित महिमा वर्षभोग्येन भर्तुः यक्षश्चक्रे जनकतनया स्नानपुण्योदकेषु स्निग्धच्छाया तरुषु वसतिं रामगिर्याश्रमेषु। इदानीं शिखरिणी
भवतु।
आमां महाकवेः भासस्य खगावासोपेता सलिलमवगाढो मुनिजन प्रदीप्तोऽग्निर्भाति प्रविचरति धूमो मुनिवनं परिभ्रष्टो दूराद् रविरपि च संक्षिप्तकिरणो रथं व्यावर्त्यासौ प्रविशति शनैरस्तशिखरम्। इदानीं
धन्यवादाः। शालूर्विक्रीडितं शिष्टं वर्तते अतिधृति छन्दसः वृत्तं
श्रावयामि
यदि भवति।
अस्तु अस्तु, पारम्परिकं वर्तते सारस्वतं वन्दनं। या कुन्देन्दुतुषारहारधवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रावृता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्कर प्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा वन्दिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा. धन्यवादः.
Very good.
Thank you very much. Bhuyo Bhuyo Dhanyavada. I am tempted to make a few remarks or to cite at least two examples. You see, if you allow me, Vijayji.
Yeah, please continue. You have more slides left. Just finish it up.
So, yeah, thank you very much, Pathak, Dr. Pathak. I talked to him in the morning today, and I knew that he is not feeling well. So I told him that if it is possible, then join. And if you join and you feel like reciting, then I would request you. Otherwise, I won't insist.
We'll do a whole session on him. We'll do a whole session through him. I'll talk to him.
So he said that. Yeah, he said that perhaps he will feel better if he recites there in this session. That Chandas will cure him. So all who are adept in this tradition, they feel that Chandas will help them. So he believed, he was confident that he will be able to recite and he will feel better after that. I also feel, many times I also feel that it becomes a sort of cure for you. It becomes a sort of solace for you. And I just wanted to add to whatever he has presented in such a beautiful sonorous rendering. Atishakwari has 15 letter structure, Panchadashakshara Atishakwari. And I think, is it Malini from it? Yeah, Malini is from Atishakwari, maybe. So Pathak ji has recited Malini of Kalidasa. And there is one Pushpadant, Mahakavi Pushpadant, who has written a Shiv Mahimna Stotram. That Shiv Mahimna Stotram is very well known amongst the bhaktas of Shiva, among the Shivites and devotees. It's a very philosophical poem. And the whole Shiv Mahimna Stotram is written in Malini Chandas, like Ravana's Shiv Tandavam, written in Panch Chamar, or Mat Cheshtitam of Bharat Mani. This Shiv Mahimna Stotram is composed in Malini. So you can see that a poet who excels in this kind of structure of Chandas, how he creates the rhythmic patterns. Asitagiri samam syat kajjalam sindhu patre surataruvar shakha lekhani patra murvi likhati yadi grahitva sharada sarva kalam tadapi tava gunana nishaparam nayati. So the rapid movements and then yati and stopping, pondering over, all these gestures, they are there. And as I said, that Bhagavati excels in Shikharini, and for very tender moments of life, he portrays them through Shikharini. So Rama is speaking to Sita. Rama is speaking for Sita, and what tender feelings he has for Sita in his Uttaram Charitam. Thank you, Bahulkarji. Iyam gehe Lakshmi Riyam Amritavartir Nayanayo Rasavasya Sparsho Papushi Bahalash Chandan Rasa Ayam Bahu Kante Shishiram Rasino Mauktika Sarah Kimasya na preyo yadi paramasaihastu viraha. Everything is dear about her. You see, she is my Graha Lakshmi. She is the Lakshmi of my house. She is like Amritavarti in my eyes, and a anjan of elixir, and her arm around my shoulder, is like a necklace of pearls on my neck, and the very touching of her hand appears as a balm of sandal paste, and what is everything is dear about her, only separation of her that is unbearable. So these things are said, but the chandas you see, and the way the performer who performs this Uttaram Charitam, the actor who performs Rama, the way he will be doing this stanza. So you can just imagine through that rhythmic pattern. So thank you very much, and I'm sorry if I have taken much more time, and now the floor is open to whatever Vijay ji wants it to be done. Thank you.
Study.
You can at least close the slides.
Right. But I just wanted to comment on the books that you referred for the sake of guidance.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, these are the bibliographical notes. Sorry, you can do, please.
No, I don't do. I think you just Sabruddesi, Dattilam, Natyashastra. So just a little more comment as a guideline, because some of our people are here, our IDC people. So what they may study for get a gist of what you said, which is the most important.
Yeah, this is, you see, for further reading, I prepared this list, but those who are not Sanskritist, they may not be able to make use of all of them, but they can consult number 2 by Mukunda Lath, because it contains a study, and Mukunda Lath is an authority on Dattilam. His work is well known, and these are the Sanskrit texts, but in the supplementary reading you will find the study of Mukunda Lal on Dattilam. So those who cannot go through the Sanskrit text, they may consult the secondary sources, the studies. Please open the previous one, the first one. So I will comment on number 1, beginning from number 1. Yes. So Brihadeshi, only those who can understand Sanskrit and those who have a background of musicology, that also the Vedic music system, as we discussed yesterday, for them it is useful. It's a wonderful text, standard text, both Brihadeshi and Dattilam. But if you are not a Sanskritist, then it will not be of use for you. You just consult the study of Dattilam. Natyashastra, if you are interested in Chandas Shastra, then only the second volume with English translation you can consult. Those who can read Sanskrit, they can read Natyashastra. The complete text it's a great text. It is one of the greatest contribution of India to world culture, as I say. So there are translations of Natyashastra. Those who cannot read original Sanskrit text, they can read Manmohan Ghosha's translation, and there is a latest translation by N.P. Unni that also you will find in this bibliography. So you can consult the translation, and if you are particularly interested in Chandas Shastra, then consult the 14th and 15th chapters of Natyashastra. Sankshipta Natyashastram by me is a Natyashastra in a concise form with text and translation, but it is in Hindi. Those who can read Hindi, they can go through it. It's a handy book and comprising all the chapters of Natyashastra, text and translation, the major portion from each chapter. So otherwise, all the editions of Natyashastra, they are not useful. And coming to the next one, no, we can leave it. And coming to the next after it, Appa Rao's monograph on Bharata's Natyashastra, if you can acquire it, you can go through it. It's a good study of Bharata's 4th chapter, Tandav Lakshan. Those who are interested in dance, they can go through this work. And This is an unpublished, as I referred, Pathak ji has this document, and he will publish it, so that will be available when he publishes it. Those who are interested in rasa theory, then it's a very good study by Noli. Noli is a good scholar of Indian aesthetics and aesthetic experience. According to Abhinav Gupta, it contains the original text in Roman and a very good translation done after a lot of labor by Noli. And otherwise, if you are interested in recitation techniques of Chandas, you can go through this book by Howard Vine, published from Motilal Banarsi Das, Veda Recitation in Varanasi. It's a good survey. And those who are interested in aesthetics, they can, it's a good book by Mason and Patwardhan, Shantrasa and Abhinav Gupta's philosophy of aesthetics. It should be end, sorry. And Aesthetic Rupture also, the same authors, by the same authors. You can, those who are interested in Indian aesthetics, rasa theory, they can go through these books. Otherwise, those who are interested in ancient musicology, Mukunda Latha's book, A Study of Dattilam, will be very useful for them. And yes, Gujarati translation is also available. I know. That must be in the bibliography somewhere. And coming to the next one, I'm missing the last title here. You can go through the next, please. Yeah. So G.S. Tarlekar was a good scholar of Natya Shastra, and he did a project work on Sama Gayana, Sama tradition, and that he has published. He was a very good scholar based in Pune, and he had a lot of affection for me also. I'm very happy that I could won the affection of such stalwarts, you see. So Tarlekar used to meet me, and he used to listen to my presentations, whatever he appreciated me. So he was also very encouraging. So towards in the last years of his life, he did this project on the Sama, it should be Sama chants, you see. And the lectures on Natya Shastra, if it is available, it's a general book, a general study on Natya Shastra. It's a collection of lectures delivered by me at Center of Advanced Study, Pune University. And Indian Aesthetics Revisited also, Pune University has published. So you can, if these are available, then you can have them in your library, and that may be an addition to your library. And these are also good reference books. So these are the proceedings of panel on Natya Shastra in the World Sanskrit Conference, 15th World Sanskrit Conference and 16th World Sanskrit Conference. The panel of Natya Shastra, the proceedings have been published, and they are available. So you can acquire them. And this is the study of Natya Shastra in Indian dramatic tradition, collection of seminar proceedings, of course. And they were also edited by me, and this IGNCA, NNM has published them. So these are for reference purpose, maybe. And those who are interested in the history of Natya Shastra, so 2 books I have. So all the masters of theory of Natya Shastra and literary theory, they are, you see, discussed here in this book, History of Natya Shastra by N.P. Unni. Another book also in Hindi, Natya Shastra Ka Itihas by Parasnath Dwivedi. That also is a good volume of study. Yes, Godavari Ketkar's book, Gujarati translation by Godavari Ketkar, Gujarati translation of Natya Shastra is there. And her study of Natya Shastra in Gujarati is there. That is available in Hindi translation also. I don't know whether it is English translation is available. I am forgetting. And Thakur Jaydev Singh is supposed to be an authority on Indian musicology. And those who can read Hindi, these are very good books. Bharati Sangeet Ka Itihas, and Lal Mani Mishra's book is good for those who want to understand the Indian instruments. So Bharati Sangeet Vadya, that is a good volume. Otherwise, these are the reference books, Bharatiya Natya Swarup or Parampara, Natya Shastra or Vishwa Rangmanch. Those who can read Hindi, it is supposed to be a very comprehensive, exhaustive reference work on Natya Shastra. That is Natya Shastra Vishwakosh. Initially, it was published in 4 volumes. Now it is available in 2 larger volumes. And it covers almost everything that Natya Shastra has, the whole tradition of Natya Shastra. Not only Natya Shastra, but the texts prior to Natya Shastra, if they speak about a technical category, and some 100 texts post Natya Shastra texts, they are cited and referred. And Aprapya Natya Shastriya Grantha is a project work. It is a survey of texts which are not available, which have been lost, but they can be restored through citations. So I have tried to collect the citations of such text. Kohola's text can be recovered or restored to certain extent. Even some text on musicology also, they can, a sizable portion of them can be recovered or restored through citations in Abhinav Gupta's commentary or in other works, in commentaries on Sanskrit plays. So this work can be helpful in understanding the lacuna which is there in our tradition because of the works that have been lost. Thousands of works have been lost in this tradition. So many of them are known through citations. Then the next is a book in Hindi. You can leave it. Next, if anything else, I think we come to an end of it. So this the supplementary readings and bibliography of Sanskrit text is there with you, and whatever that can be useful, the individual scholars, it is not necessary for them to acquire all the books. Some 2-3 titles I just suggested that may be useful for their purpose. But if you are creating a library, you can try to acquire as many as them, because all of them would be good additions to library. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now, so whatever comments or questions they have, so Prem Nagar will read them. We'll have 3 different, I think, phases of this last space that we have. We have the comments and questions from the chat session. Then we'll open up for any live questions anybody has. So for a few minutes, and then we'll formally close the lecture. And I will, Professor Bahalkar is here and Professor Akluzkar is here. They may give some comments, but we will also continue, whoever interested can stay for a discussion that Professor Akluzkar will lead, which may be helpful to us in India Discovery Center regarding the how academics and the culture East and West are perceiving and what we can do. So that may be like 10-15 minutes. So we're extending, because of the presence of many people, I thought it is useful to us. And he can give his comments. People can react maybe, but just listen that this is where we may go, not that we can go. So let us open up with Prem to read the comments and questions that he has acquired.
Yeah, so there are a few questions which are on the chat. So the first one is Sangeeta Prasad. And if a text like Ram Raksha Stotra says Anushtup Chanda, what does that mean, please? So, Professor Radha Balabji, would you like to make a comment on it?
Ram Raksha Stotra Anushtup.
Ram Raksha Stotra, you see, Anushtup Chanda is suitable for Mangala, for auspicious thing, for prayer, and for narrative also, like Mahabharata and Ramayana, they all go in Anushtup Chanda, but it is supposed to be one of the most auspicious type of vrattas or chandas. and it is used. The very name actually, Anushtup means Mangal itself. So it is good for prayer, for hymns, for eulogy, and it creates that sort of effect. That is why the whole Gita almost is in Anushtup, and so many of our texts, they are written in Anushtup. Many Shastric texts, knowledge system texts, they are also written in Anushtup, because it creates a good environment, good ecosystem, you can say. That is only thing I can say. So Ram Raksha Stotra that way is suitably written in.
Next one.
Yeah, so the next question is from Shivaram. So each Veda Samhita mantra is associated with the Rishi. Devta, with the Rishi, Devta,
Yes.
and Chanda. What is the significance of Chanda when taken together with the Rishi and Devta or the deity? And does it have anything to do with the institutionalization of the oral tradition?
With the institution like?
Institutionalization of oral tradition.
Yeah, I think you are right to a certain extent. And each hymn has a Rishi and Devta and Chandas. And as I said that a particular Chandas is connected to a particular deity or a particular Devta, that is also there. But for every hymn, you cannot explain why this Rishi has adopted this Chandas, and why this whole hymn is in Jagati only. And in some hymns, a variety of Chandas is adopted. It is Trishtup and mixed Trishtup, and many mixed varieties are also there. So everywhere you cannot explain, because this deity is connected to this Chandas, therefore this Chandas is adopted. Everywhere perhaps you cannot say. In the same way, you cannot also say that because he is the Rishi, he is writing in this Chandas. This also about the Veda you cannot say. So about this process, because it was all seen by them. So the Rishis are not composing as we compose poetry. We are writing with a pen on a piece of paper. That way they are not composing. So the mantras were coming to them. So some kind of mystery is there. So you cannot always explain that this should be the Chandas for this, and this should have been the Rishi for that. That you can, that much I can say. Otherwise, Professor Akluzkar is there. Maybe he.
Now the varieties of Trishtup that we are seeing, so they are the part of that 4096. When you say Trishtup as 4096, so they have Trishtup as a main, but then some stanzas may change, and they have some other names for them. So what you are saying is that part of that large family.
Yes. Yeah, whatever Trishtup we get in Rigveda, that may be one out of this 4090. That much is certain.
Okay.
But when we write.
Good. Okay, you'll comment.
Yeah, so the next question actually is a comment, but let's read it.
Brief.
Yeah. Natya Shastra in Gujarati was published about 100 years ago in Bhavnagar, and it is available on web. So there's more of an information.
Good. Okay, very good.
And the next question by Devnaran, this is about Anantanada. Are there examples of Ananta in the Vedas? Nadas, basically his...
Anahata, he should have, it should be Anahata.
No, he talks of Anantanaga. So the word Ananta is in a Vedic word or not, most likely not, but you can say. Ananta as a word.
The one who is mentioned in the Yoga Sutra.
No, but Premji has written Anahat Nad. That's what it is.
Okay, all right.
He has written Anahat. Okay.
It is Anahat Nada.
Okay, that is there.
You cannot cite an example of Anahat Nada. It is not audible, you see. You won't find an example. It is something to be realized within. So I can't cite an example. The example would be that if you hear a mantra and something rings within you, something resounds within you, that may be a form of Anahata Nada. But you can't cite an example. You see, it is an experience. Anahata Nada is always experienced. You can't, you can neither produce it, you can neither illustrate it, you can nor cite it. You can give a rough idea that a seer is experiencing it. So, for example, some Sufi poet, he says that I make my body a rabab, and I make my manas, my mind, my heart as tantu, and some raga is ringing within me, and only my sai, the antaryami within me is hearing. Sab man tant rabab tana virah bajave nit, और न कोई सुन सके कै साईं को चित्त. So he is describing the Anahata Nada, but he says that I only, my antaryami hears it. I myself do not hear it. Somebody within me is hearing it. I just feeling that something is resounding within me. My body has become a sitar, a rabab. So you can't give an example. You can just say that it is being felt somewhere by somebody.
Right. Okay. Move. Any other question?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a question yesterday by Suchita Rao. So if she is there, if she can ask that question. Suchita ji, are you there?
We will come to that. I think Babulkar is there. I think he actually supposed to have introduced Professor. So live questions will take later. So now Professor Tripathi, where is Professor Babulkar?
He sent a message that I'm leaving. I'm sorry, I'm leaving.
Oh, he said he's leaving?
I read a message from him.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You see if he's there.
No, he's not there. He's not there. I'm sorry.
I don't see
Okay,
him.
all right. So we have some live questions we'll take. So Sucheta, continue if you have question. Unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Really, I don't have a question. I just wanted to express appreciation for the talk.
Good, very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody has a live question?
Yeah, this is Satyendra. I have a live question.
Okay.
So just to comment on, I mean, not the comment, but the question on Anahat. You said that it is inaudible. It is inaudible. But is it not unstruck sound? Because it is pretty much audible to the mystic.
Yes.
No, it is unphysiological.
Unphysiological, unstruck, as you said.
Unphysiological.
So, you cannot produce it.
No ahata.
Yeah.
No ahata. So sound has to be produced by vibration. There's no vibration.
Right, but
the vibration is only perceived vibration. So that's a different thing.
Yeah.
So rhythm is, means I think that when we do our language table, we kind of think about those.
Yes,
so
yes,
it's logical.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It's not really physiological. Anything else?
I had a couple questions.
Yeah, who is this? Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Shivani.
Okay.
I don't have my video on.
Shivani Joshi.
Yes, Shivani Joshi, yes.
Okay, yeah.
So my question, I came across a YouTube video regarding the Shiv Tandav Stotram, expressing that it is unique because it only uses the A vowel. It doesn't use the E or any other of the vowels in the alphabet. So I was wondering if that is part of the Chanda Veda, or is that something developed separate, or is that one of the varieties that you were explaining?
I couldn't understand the question. Shiv Tandav has a typical structure. That's right. What is the question exactly? Can you repeat it a bit slowly?
Yes. The question is that the text or the words that are being used only use the A, like Jatata, Vigalaj, Prabhava. Use the E or any of the other vowels in the alphabet.
Right.
So is that a part of the Chand, the literature?
That is very much a part of the Chanda. So if you utter meaningless sound, you just say kata jata, kata jata, kata jata, kata jata, that would form 1/4 of Panchamar Chanda, but it will not be a meaningful chanda. So if you understand this chanda, you can, the chanda, perhaps the meaningful chanda would come when you compose. So that is the idea. So you have to understand the structure, and you have to understand that this would be the structure like this: jata kata, jata kata, jata kata, jata kata. If that structure is understood, then, and the effect of it, the vibration that it sends, this kind of structure. So you have to understand that it doesn't have e or u. All these sounds are not there. And the combination of lagu guru, lagu guru, lagu guru, the short and long, that creates this kind of, as if some army is marching, as if some resounding drum is being played, as if the clouds are thundering. So this kind of effect can be created by this structure.
So is that a variety of the Anushtup Chand, or is that?
No, it is a variety of Jagati.
Okay.
Jagati, it is 12 aksharas.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay. Yes. And then my
So
other
I think
question,
let us close it now.
I have one more question I'd like to ask. I know the Chands
email.
are.
Okay.
Oh, an email, would it be easier?
No, quickly if you can do. I think it's kind of getting late.
Okay. So the Chands, you said they have a more religious and spiritual context because they are reciting all these Vedic literature. But is there any non-Vedic was it ever used in like non-Vedic education, like amongst common people during that time? Chand.
There are so many texts on Chanda Shastra which discuss the non-Vedic varieties, and they are available with translations. Chando Manjari is there, Ratnakar is there, and translations in English are also available. So that those books can be consulted. I think this was the question, or?
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. I think it's a very good question. We'll try to address it during the series of lectures. See if we can. Okay. So can I ask all people to kindly unmute and have a round of applause for Professor Tripathi for his excellent work. We are so grateful for your work, and for Rushiraj for his singing, and for a beautiful presentation, beautiful preparation. We learned so much out of it. It gave a whole different view of the Indian literature and music system that we abroad we deeply appreciate. So if people are ready, can we do?
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.